the comments at the moment. Um, is it all good? I'm gonna go into the chat and see if I can. Um, okay, amazing stuff. All right. I'll jump in and out just to check questions and stuff because I can only see the presentation. Okay, let me just put hide for this. Right. Hello, everybody. My name is Tony. My pronouns are they, he, and I'm the Liberation Officer for the Students' Union. Okay, is there a question? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, yeah. Just saying awesome. Okay. Yeah, and I'm the Liberation Officer from the Students' Union. I'm very happy to do this presentation to all of you. So, at the end, you'll be able to get like a rainbow lanyard. But because we didn't want to just sort of like give out the lanyard and stuff. We wanted to make sure that we were kind of giving you the tools to be able to like support. Because for a lot of people, LGBT people in general, if I see someone that's wearing like a rainbow lanyard, I'm like, ally, LGBT, or something. And I just kind of like how can I put it? It's just you feel like it's somebody that you have a conversation with, and you can be around them, and you will feel sort of like safe and stuff. So we wanted to make sure that we were giving every single person like the tools and resources and stuff to be able to like be more supportive and stuff. For a lot of you, a couple of the things that are going to be in this presentation might not be any news and stuff. You might already know it. But it's always good to like sort of refresh our brains and stuff and start good discussions and stuff. So again, if you have any questions throughout, please just put them in the chat. And yeah, I'll jump in and out from here and the presentation and the chat just to see if there's any questions. But yeah, please put your questions. There's no stupid questions. Everything is a question. Is it all good? Please feel free, and I'll do my best to answer them. But without any further ado, I'm going to give it a start. You realize that I ramble a lot, and I'm sorry about that. So, without any further, okay, see, I'm rambling now. Without any further ado, let's give it a start. So again, we're gonna go through like glossary of terms, again, things that you probably already know, but it's always good to kind of like have a little bit more of like a look. But yeah, besides the point. So we're gonna start with sexual orientation, which is a person's sexual attraction to other people or lack thereof. And this, along with romantic attraction, forms a person's orientation identity. Pretty straightforward. LGBTQIA, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer questioning, intersex, asexual, aromantic, or agender. We'll say there's this thing about the A being for ally, and I would say, well, so you appreciate allies, very good people. You know, I just beat my chest today, regardless. Very good people. We love allies everywhere. The A does not, the allies aren't necessarily part of the LGBT community, and the A is used more for asexual, aromantic, agender people. So, yeah, very important to note that. Gender, which is often expressed in terms of masculinity and femininity, and gender is largely and culturally determined. It's largely culturally determined and is assumed from the sex that you were assigned at birth. So it's more like your gender identity, who you sort of see yourself as. But we're gonna get a little bit more into like gender and stuff a little bit later. But going on to the next slide, we have gender expression, which is how a person chooses to outwardly express their gender. So we just spoke about gender, which is more like how you perceive yourself to be. It's sort of internal, like if you're male, female, non-binary, trans and stuff. So that's sort of, that kind of informs that's gender. Gender expression is more outwardly. So how you dress, people who may be a little bit more androgynous, people who are more gentle, non-conforming, and all these different things. This is where a person with gender expression is. You can also, like, how you present yourself. You want to present yourself as male, you want to present yourself as female as well. That's gender expression. Yeah, it's just how you express yourself, how you speak, how you talk, all those different things. Then we have trans, which is an umbrella term to describe people whose gender is not the same as the sex that they were assigned at birth. Yeah, pretty, so we just spoke about gender just before. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. Then we have cisgender, which is someone whose gender is the same as the sex that they were assigned at birth. So I myself identify as a cisgender person. My gender is the same as the sex that I was assigned at birth. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Um, Non-binary, which is an umbrella term for people who don't identify as either man or woman. Now, with non-binary, some people see it as what's in the definition here, not being one or the other, just being like straight up in the middle. But for some people, it's like a full-on rejection of the notion of gender. It's like gender. Because for a lot of people, gender is a social construct, and shouldn't necessarily be sort of a means to like categorize people in general. So some people see it as a big like fu to gender in general, and they perceive themselves in that they know themselves to be in that particular way. So you might find either or sort of people explanations for how people see who non-binary people are. I myself see it more as the other explanation in terms of like being a big fu to gender in general because yeah, it's not I don't see it as necessarily yeah, okay. These are just my opinions, but besides the point. It's how you perceive it, how you like to use the term for yourself and stuff. But yeah, besides the point. Um then we have gay, which refers to men, male aligned romantic or sexual attraction, and lesbian, which refers to women, women aligned romantic or sexual attraction. So we use the male aligned, women aligned here because there are non-binary people who um who still refer themselves as gay, gay non-binary man, gay non-binary woman, and stuff like that. So it's very important when we're thinking about like when we're people's sexual orientations and stuff like that. We take that into consideration because some non-binary people will still refer themselves as gay. Some non-binary people will refer themselves as trans, as lesbian, and stuff like that. So it's very important for us to like be inclusive in our language when we're thinking about like the whole sexual attraction, orientation, and stuff like that. Then we have bisexual, which is an umbrella term used to describe a romantic or sexual attraction towards the same gender or others. So there's this thing of like um, there's people like to use bisexual or other people prefer to use pansexual. They're different terms, but usually they kind of very interchangeable. People usually see bisexual as like a very like binary term, so it's like either like a woman or a man. It's not they don't see it as an inclusive term for other gender identities, but it's not always seen as the case. It just depends as what the person likes to present themselves as. I know a lot of bisexual people are not just confined in either just a man or a woman. They are attracted to people from different genders and stuff like that. But some people just prefer to use pansexual because, as a term as it is, it kind of encompasses everything. But it's up to the person, up to you which term you would like to use as well. But yeah. Then we have queer, which is often used as an umbrella term as well for any queer identity, and is used by those wanting to reject specific labels of romantic sexual attraction or gender identity. It might not just be to reject labels, but some people do use it because they don't want to conform to like one particular label or one particular thing. It's just a lot easier to present yourself as like, "Hi, I'm a queer person," and this goes in hand with what is it? Blah, blah, blah. Wait, why is my brain went like zero? Oh, yes, I remember. So for some queer people, it's just a lot easier to present yourself as to say queer, other than okay, say a gay, trans, non-binary, trans, gender non-conforming, androgynous person and stuff. It's very tiring to say that every single time I introduce myself or something. So people will just be like, okay, hi, I'm queer. Because yeah, sometimes people just use that to like, again, as an umbrella term for their identities. And I would say that it's very important that to note that queer is a term that's been reclaimed by the community. It has a lot of negative context to it. So when we're thinking about like using the term and stuff, you have to be very mindful that for some people, it might not necessarily be a good word to hear. So it's been reclaimed. We use it now quite frequently, to be fair, when we're talking about queer politics and all these different things about. We use queer everywhere. So Queer Eye as well. We've all watched that show. We love it and stuff. So it's it's more acceptable to use it now, but not in a derogatory term. But some people do use it in that way. So let's just be mindful of that. Right. And then we have intersex, which is a person who may have the biological attributes of both sexes, or whose biological attributes do not fit societal assumptions about what constitutes as being male or female. Um, so a person who's intersex may be born with both. Yeah, yeah. It says it's very. I think it's. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat, and I'll expand a little bit more on it. But I'm gonna delve into a little bit more about intersex identities in a later slide. Then we have homophobia, which encompasses homophobia and transphobia. You probably already know this. Encompasses a range of negative attitudes and feelings towards homosexuality or people who are identified or perceived as being LGBT. And the same would be for transphobia, encompasses the hatred, disbelief, or mistrust of people who are trans, thought to be trans, or whose gender expression doesn't conform to traditional gender roles. So again, I think here it's like sometimes you don't necessarily have to be LGBT. Sometimes you might just be wearing something that doesn't necessarily conform with the gender roles that exist in the world, and you may still be a victim of homophobia or transphobia and stuff like that. So again, like when we're talking about the gender expression, as it says here, it's like you may be a straight person, but if you dress like in a straight cisgender person, but if you dress in a particular way, you may or may not go through suffer some form of homophobia or transphobia. But this happens a lot for trans people as well, non-binary people who don't. There's this term that's used a lot, passing and stuff. That tends to be even harder for trans and non-binary people who aren't like yeah who don't necessarily pass as being a woman or a man and stuff like that. It's a very problematic term, saying passing, but we use it now. Be mindful of using it as well. So it's like you don't even necessarily have to be gay or trans and stuff like that. You may still go through sort of homophobia and transphobia and stuff. And then we have ally, which is typically a straight or cis person who supports members of the LGBT community. Pretty straightforward again. Right. So I got like this cute gingerbread person, who is I find quite cute with the eyes and the smile and stuff. But yeah, I think it just like indicates things properly, and you can clearly see that gender identity and expression and sex are completely different things. So gender identity is how a person knows themselves to be being a trans, cisgender, non-binary. So the person themselves knows who they are. So it's very clearly separate from sex, which is just legit like your genitals and biology and all these different things that shouldn't necessarily inform your gender identity. And then we have expression, as we were talking, outwardly, how you express, what you wear, how you talk, how you interact with the world, all these different things. Just like yeah, and then we have attraction, that cute little heart there, which again, you're attracted to who you like. It's more like of a internal feeling sort of thing, very mushy stuff that we all love. Okay, so we have the reality today in the UK. So all the main anti-gay laws have been abolished, which is good, I guess. No, not I guess, it's actually good. People who were convicted under the old laws that made being gay legal can apply to have these taken off their record, although this is very limited. I'd say this is very limited because there are still some crimes or some convictions that aren't necessarily seen as reasons enough for things to be taken off people's records. There's instances of people who went to ask to get these taken off. They weren't successful. So it's a very tricky process. But some people have been very successful with it, which is good. We just saw, not just, it was quite some time ago, but Alan Turing was pardoned and stuff like that. Even the word pardon, what was he pardoned for? Like, it wasn't even his fault. It's just the language around all these different things is just very, very, very dehumanizing, I would say still. Because you're pardoning as if the person did something. No, they didn't do anything. But yeah, it's like all these things are coming off now that the people have died and stuff like that. Which what's the point now? I know it does send a good message, but at the same time, it's like way too late now. You already affected the person's life. Right. Anyways, it is still illegal to discriminate against somebody because you're LGBT plus, but that's not the case anywhere in the world. We very much know that this still happens. Same-sex marriage is legal in the UK and Northern Ireland as of 13th January 2020. And this year will mark the 48th Pride celebration that we celebrated at home. Or if you were brave enough, you went outside or something. I don't know. But yeah, hopefully in like 1 2 years time, we'll be able to like go outside and like do our good Pride celebrations and stuff, and have the good parties and enjoy being gay or being an ally and stuff like that. And yeah, Pride is always good vibes, but life. Anyways, it's all well and good that we have all these amazing, all these good things in the here in the UK and stuff. But it's always good to kind of remember that there's still a ways to go. So we see here that conversion therapy is still very much legal. Just to bring everybody up to speed, so conversion therapy is like sort of therapy, if I could put it. It's not even therapy. It's like a process of like sort of converting a person who is LGBT into like the straight cis sort of person and stuff. See, it's like turning that back into what they perceive as being normal and stuff and all these different things. So, and this is a very sort of rudimentary way of like explaining it. So if you want to learn more about what conversion therapy is, I very much encourage you to have a look. And it's still legal, and we know that this kind of has a lot of effects towards people's mental health, and it can affect them in the long term with sort of identity and how they see themselves. It's not even a thing that you need to ask. It's just things that you just know that this is how it's going to affect people. Then we have PrEP. It's not subsidized by the NHS and isn't readily available. So PrEP, for those who don't know, it's pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's a drug that's used to sort of prevent HIV, but also if you have it, it's good to take it because it helps reduce your viral count. And if you reduce your viral count, it's good to like keep on having it because it keeps it low, and yeah, it's undetectable and stuff and all these different things. But yeah, so yeah, again, it not being subsidized and not being available is a very tricky thing because it's to protect a lot of people. We have sex in general. I don't think it's not only just for LGBT people. Straight people can use it as well. It's, same, everybody can use it. It's always good to protect yourself in terms of sex and stuff like that, but these aren't provided for anyone. So, well, aren't easily attainable. Then we have intersex people that are still being operated on under false pretenses. So again, this goes. I think we've seen loads of cases. A particular case is no. I'm gonna start with like, yeah, intersex babies who are born. We see a lot of doctors making decisions and stuff like that, along with their families, going in and doing all these operations. If somebody is born with sort of the genitals that they feel like, oh, because they see like the development of the genitals and stuff like that, and make the decisions based on that, which is a very problematic thing to do because these operations, they can have long-term effects and into the people, not only biological but sort of heavily mental effects, because the person goes into puberty, and things start to develop, and there might be a crisis of like identity within themselves because who they are was sort of like taken out of them the moment they were born without their consent. See, all these things are very important when we're like doing all these things, like thinking about consent and all these different things. And we know in sports, a lot of intersex people go through many hurdles. Trans people as well. You either have to take too much. There's testosterone levels, estrogen levels, all these different things that trans intersex people are always forced to be taking. There's a case of Caster Semenya. She's a sprinter thing, sprint. I'm not very sporty, so I'm sorry, but she does Olympics and stuff. She's very good, very fast. One of the best in the world, if I'm not mistaken. She just lost the battle now that they were looking into. So I think it was banning her or giving her something to reduce her testosterone levels and stuff like that. It was a legal battle, and she lost the battle and stuff. It was quite public. I think it was a month or two ago that this happened, if I'm not mistaken. So please have a look if you can. So yeah, all these different things that kind of invalidate the experience of people. It's like, oh, you're. It's like people still don't accept trans and intersex people as they are. Gender Recognition Act hasn't been reformed. So Gender Recognition Act was made like 2004, 2005, 6, around that time. And we need to catch up with the times. It's 2020 now. A lot of the stuff that is there is very problematic because for trans people in particular, there's things there that there's this notion that if you want to transition, or if you want to go through the entire transition process, so surgery and all these different things, you have to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria. And for a lot of trans people, this isn't the case. A lot of trans people don't necessarily go through gender dysphoria to be able to transition. So it's like this thing of like medicalizing being trans, which shouldn't be happening, and it's still there. But recently, I think non-binary identities were sort of um, it's not accepted, but were included within sort of a gender identity sort of thing. I can't find the right words. It's they are included now. I think as a valid form of like as a ah I can't find the words. I knew the words, but yeah, people, non-binary people are now sort of considered as a valid gender. Valid gender. It's a weird way of putting it, but I can't think of the better words to put it in. People are still victims of homophobic and transphobic attacks. So yeah, and we're gonna get into that a little bit later. So again, whilst it's good to like talk about the situation in the UK and stuff like that, I think it's always good to kind of talk about the context within the world. So because a lot of whilst we have it sort of good here in the UK, it's good to like look into other countries who are having it a lot worse. So here we have like 72 countries criminalize private consensual same-sex relationships, and majority of these countries explicitly criminalize sex between men. And they have all these laws, sodomy, buggery, and unnatural offenses. And yeah, and a lot of these places, it's not even safe for you to be because you might there's a lot of hate culture, community, and all these different things. We know that these laws don't necessarily mean anything, but they're used as ways to invalidate people's identities and experiences. Then we have 42 countries which criminalize private consensual sex activity relations between women. Some countries that do not explicitly criminalize women, some women have been subject to arrest or threat of arrest. So I think this just goes to show that even though you might not be criminalized, there may be protected laws and stuff like that, that the culture and community are in a particular place in a country and stuff like that is very important and it affects how people perceive you. So it's like, whilst you may be protected, in a lot of places, people are still victims of homophobia, transphobia. People are still being attacked, as you can see here. Some people are still arrested, even though there's no particular laws that say that they're against or anything. So it's a very tricky situation, which says that like I think this goes beyond everywhere. Because even here in the UK and stuff, we might have all these laws that protect LGBT people, but people are still being victims of a whole lot of homophobic, transphobic attacks and stuff. So tricky situation. In 11 countries can still impose death penalty, and at least 6 of these implement the death penalty. So like, it's a death sentence to be LGBT. And in 6 of these countries, it's for sure like, okay, if you are LGBT, you're defo gonna die. And it makes you think about like refugee programs and opening borders and stuff like that, and bringing people in so they can live authentic as themselves. So like, there's a lot of programs out there. We see like governments trying to close and all these different things. But for a lot of people, this means that their safety is compromised and all these different. So we need to be considerate and think about programs and all these different things to bring people in so they can live their life safely. Then we have 15 countries which criminalize gender identity and expression of trans and non-binary people using impersonation and disguise laws. I personally find this, well, I find all of these things disgusting, to be fair. But in this particular part, it's just, again, the invalidation of trans and non-binary identities, because trans people and non-binary people aren't impersonating anyone, aren't disguising themselves or something, aren't trying to be something. They are who they are, and they're just trying to live their true self, and be comfortable in their own identity. And I think this is a lot worse for, again, when we're talking before about like the passing thing and stuff like that. It, I think people who might not pass, who might not necessarily want to go through the entire process of transitioning, the surgeries and stuff like that, may have it a lot worse. So it's a very dehumanizing thing that happens in the world. It's like invalidating issues as well, because it's not like we're trans and non-binary people are trying to be something that they're not. It's just they're trying to be who they are, but the world tells them that you're just trying to play us and stuff like that, which is a very disgusting thing to see. Anyways, then we have a couple of more facts. I'm sorry that this is a little bit fact heavy. We're gonna get into like a more fun part in the later slides. But I think it's always good to have like context in a lot of parts. So I'm gonna pick one of these. This stats was taken from the National LGBT Survey. Over 108,000 respondents. Maybe I got that right. Yeah, it's right in there at the bottom. At least 2 in 5 respondents had experienced an incident because they were LGBT, such as verbal harassment or physical violence, in the 12 months preceding the survey. However, 9 in 10 of most of these serious incidents went underreported, often because respondents thought it happens all the time. What I think about this, because as an LGBT person myself, and I would say that a lot of LGBT people would probably understand as well, is that this thing of like it happens all the time. We say it quite a few times, and it's very disheartening to see. Um, because it's very disheartening to see, because it's like we shouldn't be desensitized from receiving homophobic attacks or being attacked or in any way, shape, or form. But it's like when you know yourself as LGBT, you kind of have to accept to yourself that like, okay, this means that I'm going to have to be resilient. This means that if I'm walking around in the world, I'm going to have to like always have this guard up and always like be able to take it and all these different things. And it's not always the case. A lot of people tend to defend themselves and stuff like that, but for a lot of people, it's like it's constantly being sort of on the edge and constantly having to like take it and not always dish it, because there's this thing of safety. Because for a lot of people, if you come out and you defend yourself, it might turn into a violent situation. And when you report, people sometimes don't believe you, or people just minimize it, or they just gaslight you and stuff like that. So it's very important for us to take that into consideration. It's very disheartening. I know myself. I've said it. I've said this before. It's like, what's the point of like reporting, because people don't feel confident in reporting and all these different things. Then we have a couple of stats here. I'm just going to go through 2 or 3 that I find very interesting. 30% of trans students and 70% of LGBT students have faced negative comments or conduct from university staff. Okay. This is very tricky, because university staff are meant to be there to, well, their first port of call, to protect, teach, and we go to them with all our issues. So if we're getting hate from university staff and stuff like that, what does that mean? What's the language? What's the culture around the universities in general? So it's a very weird situation. 47% of LGBT students with disabilities have been targets of homophobic comments. So again, when we're thinking about our activism and stuff, I'll just put it out there. So when we think about LGBT people, the people who usually get a lot of representation out there is the gay white man. It's just the truth. It is what it is, and we always tend to forget that there are many different intersecting identities within. So there's LGBT students with disabilities, LGBT Muslims, LGBT black people of color. There's some people who are LGBT with disabilities, people of color, all at the same time. All these different things. So it's very important to understand that people who are part of different communities that all at once have multiple identities can have it a lot worse. And it's very important for us to think about that. And then 13%, oh, 13, Tony, 16% of trans people and 42% of non-binary students don't feel able to wear clothes representing their gender at university, and at least 20% of students were encouraged by staff to hide that they were trans. Again, I think it goes back into looking at the culture and environment that we're in. Are we making sure that the university is an inclusive space for people to feel safe to wear what they want, to express their gender how they want, and be who they want, who they know that they are. So it's a very tricky situation, particularly for trans and non-binary students, because that's sort of not fitting within society, the societal norms and stuff like that. And I think we need to foster and create a better environment and stuff, and thinking about students and staff maybe being encouraged to sort of hide that they are trans is sort of, I sometimes it's very disheartening to see. It's like, maybe don't do this because this might happen. Like, it's just invalidating the person. Because if I come to you and I tell you, hey, I'm trans, and the first response that I get is, maybe don't go out and tell every single person. Sometimes you can see it as like a sort of like a protecting the person and stuff like that, but sometimes that's not the case. It's just like, don't do this, just don't be you. But I think we have to go beyond that. It's not, whilst somebody may want to protect the person and stuff like that, we need to think about the message that that sends to trans people all around the universities in the world, that like maybe being you should be hidden, and we don't want to do that because that we know how that affects mental health and all these different things. So just one additional fact that I would say is like, this is from the Student Minds LGBTQ plus Student Mental Health Survey, and it was found that 93% of respondents stated that they had sought help or advice for emotional problems from friends. Again, I think this is important to kind of raise here, because a lot of people, we usually go to our friends before we go to like family and stuff like that, and we have to be knowledgeable about what we're going to do. We're going to get into a little bit more into what we can do in terms of like allyship and stuff like that and supporting, but this is just very important for you to know, like the number of people who go to their friends first before anything else. But yeah, okay. A couple more things here. What are LGBT students facing at university? So we just talked, trans experiences being pathologized in medical subjects, social sciences, in policies, and all these different things. Experiences of homophobia, transphobia from staff and students. We just said in the before. Poor administered support for trans students, such as mitigating circumstances policies. So I'm just thinking here in terms of like the whole process of transitioning is a very lengthy and hard process. Just to get like one appointment at the gender identity clinic can take around 2 years or more. It's between 6 months to 2 years, maybe three. That's if you go public, but if you go private, but private is always it's still very expensive. Not everybody can afford. But if you go for public, sort of gender identity clinics and stuff, it can be a very lengthy process, and you go through many hurdles. You have to talk to many different people. Again, you have to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria. That's not always the case. There's a lot of different things, and most of these things aren't necessarily accounted for. So it's very important for us to think about that. There's lack of representation in the curriculum. As you know, a lot of queer representation in curriculum is very true. We talk about historians, all these people that we read, all scientists and stuff. This part usually gets like erased from history, or and erased from like education, because education should be like an empowering thing. You should like leave and like feel represented what you're learning, but that doesn't happen. Or it doesn't happen as often. Lack of sexual and mental health support. We just raised that. A lack of appropriate facilities and resources. Think about gender neutral toilets or resources for students who are probably transitioning at university. Having like guides and other things. It's always good to have those things for students to have, sort of early access, so they can like learn a little bit more and have a little more information of what their options are. So all these small things are very important to have that aren't necessarily out there. Limited gender and sexuality options in university-related forms. We'll say that this is some progress has been made into this, but a lot of forms tend to be gendered. It's like male, female, other. It's like, what's other? What does other mean? I think it's very important for us to be inclusive within our forms and stuff like that. Appropriate career guidance. Again, we're gonna leave university. We're gonna go into a workplace. We're gonna go into the real world and stuff. How people say it and stuff. Um, and a lot of companies aren't necessarily very LGBT inclusive, or if they say that they are, the policies, the support isn't there, and it's important for us to think about if the careers defined that we hold at universities, are we catering for LGBT students? Are we sending students to like places where we know they're going to be supported, going to feel safe and stuff? So we have to think about career advice, career guidance and stuff. So okay, I rambled a lot. This is a part for you to like say a couple of things. So yeah, this is really a trick question. But I wanted to know from you, what can you do to be like more supportive of the LGBT community? There's no wrong answers. I think this is a very open question. So I'd like to know from you what you think we could do. I'm just gonna go to the chat and see if you have any comments. Please feel free. There's no wrong answers, by the way. Yeah, so, all is good. Yes, using the right pronouns, that's a very good one. Thank you. Dun, dun. Normalize sharing pronouns, yeah. Very important, very important stuff. Any other comments? Be accepting and open. Yes, that's very important to be. Yeah. Supporting my fellow LGBT. Yes, indeed. That's very important. Exactly. Even within our community, we have to do it ourselves. As an ally with many, there's a lot of stars. Okay, with many, I think it's LGBT plus friends. I always try to educate myself on how they experience things. Because usually it's very different from my experiences. Yes, that's a very important thing, and we're gonna get into that as well. I think we're gonna get into all of these things, like you guys are bringing in recognized straight or cis. Okay, come on, bring it in. I love this, very much love this. Um, you're all saying very amazing things here. Recognizing intersectionality. Yes, very important thing to do. Yeah, okay, okay. Thank you for you can keep on putting the comments there, but I'm gonna go back into the presentation and yeah, listen. I think listening for me is like I think for LGBT people in general, it's the not most important thing. It's a very important thing to do. Because I think listening and understanding what LGBT people are going through. That's why we put all these stats and stuff and all this additional information, because it's important for us to know and understand to be able to finally do something. So listening to LGBT stories, LGBT experiences, like you were saying in the comments there, it's the very first thing that we need to do in order to sort of that's going to inform what we're going to do with our activism and stuff like that. So things like how to be supportive of the LGBT community. You said all of these things yourself. Yeah, educating and empowering yourself. This is very important. So hope you coming to this session is already a very good thing. It's because making the active sort of taking the active steps into like being finding more information and stuff like that, but this is only like an intro thing. So again, it's going out there and sharing this information with your friends, with your family and stuff, having these conversations, because then as you're having these conversations, you're learning a little bit more yourself, you're sharing the information, you become more confident in supporting LGBT people as well. When you're faced into like a difficult situation, you'll know what to say. You'll know how to address things and stuff like that. So that's a very important thing, to be able to have the resources yourself to be able to like, you know what, this is the wrong thing, or this is how you do it, and blah blah blah. No, yeah, like that. Be visible. Hopefully with the lanyards they're gonna be able to get after this, just again email me and then we'll sort something out. Be visible. Show up for your friends and stuff like that. Not just for friends in general, LGBT things. We spoke about pride and stuff, all these nice things and stuff like that. Just show up, be visible. But we've seen in a lot of places that being visible has become like very commercialized, and people try to use being LGBT allies and stuff like that for clout or something. I don't know. So I'm thinking about sort of like companies and stuff like that, that once Pride Month or that period of time starts, like, yes, rainbows everywhere, but the money of everything that they go doesn't necessarily, might not go to any LGBT charities or any sort of thing. It just goes back into their own pockets, but they've profited out of sort of out of LGBT, the LGBT community and stuff. So be visible, work with LGBT people, actually, platform LGBT voices and stuff like that. Be aware of how much space you're taking and be self-aware. Acknowledge your privileges. So these are things that you raised. Very important things to have. So I'm going to give an example here. So as I said, I'm a cisgender person. And if I go to an event that is, say, more that is more sort of catered towards trans people and trans experiences, and if I go, I need to think to myself, okay, this isn't a space that was necessarily created for me. I'm just here. Maybe I came here with a friend. Maybe I just want to learn a little bit more and all these different things. I need to be aware of how much I'm talking, and if me talking too much and taking all this space, how much is it making people uncomfortable? It's very important for us to do that because sometimes it might not come from a bad place. It's just being curious or just wanting to be part of it, but part of the conversation. But we need to, if the space was created for that particular group, we need to be aware of not taking too much and letting the people who are there, whose space is meant to be, in this case, for people to talk about their experiences, to talk about their experiences, share their stories, and just have that community feel. Let me check. I just heard a beep. Oh, wrong place that I went to. I feel like sometimes you have to speak less to actively listen to others. Exactly. That is a very, very, very important thing. Very important thing to do. So it's in the spirit of this that we have to think about it all. Again, acknowledging your privileges as well. Again, as I was saying, I'm a cis person. I need to be able to, when I'm thinking about my activism, because some people only think about themselves, in terms of like when you're doing activism and all these different things. And we have to be branch out into what we're thinking. I'm cis. I don't know a lot of non-binary issues as well, but I need to be able to acknowledge that, Tony, you as a cis person, you have a little bit of a easy way of life comparing to not a little bit, quite a very easy way of life than maybe a trans person or a cis person might have. So it's just being aware of that and us knowing that, okay, this is my place. I need to go and learn a little bit more so I know how to protect people. I know how to put myself in these different spaces. Respond to anti-LGBT behavior. Now, I'm not saying go out there and start fighting, because whilst there are some situations where we wanted to throw hands to people and stuff like that, because it's very iron and like blood boiling to see any form of hate and stuff. But I always say, like, be very safe. Make sure that you're safe before, and consult with the person, because you might be turning a situation that's not violent into a very violent situation for the LGBT person. So be very careful, be very mindful of that. Always consult with them. Are you okay? Is there anything that you want me to do? But sometimes, you just really want to throw that punch. And I've been there myself sometimes. And yeah, but be careful. Go out there and starting fights. Just, yeah, everything is, and yeah, and be aware. If you're safe, talk to the person, consult. Use the correct pronouns, as you all said here. Normalize using pronouns. Again, don't. I would say don't just go ask for pronouns to the person that looks androgynous and stuff and doesn't fit the sort of like gender norms and stuff, because that's very isolating. So I say, like, always use it always, if you're encouraging like use of pronouns and stuff, do it in a general form, like use them yourself, like, oh, hi, these are my own pronouns, what are yours, and stuff like that. But address it generally. Okay, people do stickers now, societies. I've seen a couple of events and stuff. People do stickers. You can put it in their names, when you're coming into a meeting or something, that sort of thing, because it's easier, it normalizes things a little bit. So yeah, don't just go to that one person that you think, they look a little bit like, nah, let me just go and ask. Nah, that's a little bit tricky. I want to go about it like that. Respect confidentiality and consulting first. If somebody comes to you and they tell you something about their identity, or if they told you that they're gay and they like, oh, don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone. But this is just one example. Just be very careful because it might compromise their safety. It might compromise a lot of different things. So when somebody comes and tells you something, be as respectful as possible, and don't spread around anything, literally anything. There's been cases of outing that has been very, very harming for people in terms at university, at work, and in the world and stuff like that. So let's be very careful of that. The don'ts. So when we think about don'ts is well, don't minimize a person's queerness and don't question people's identities. This kind of go and hand in hand because it's a rainbow for a reason. I always say people fall into different places. It's a spectrum. Just because somebody doesn't necessarily fit what you might think as being LGBT or something doesn't make them less of an LGBT person. Um, say say this happens a lot. Say maybe there's let's say a gay man or something probably who isn't super flamboyant and stuff, blah blah blah. And you may think, oh, you don't look too gay. That's don't just because they might not be what you think is gay. That doesn't mean that the person is gay. The same goes the other way. Maybe somebody is super flamboyant and stuff. We have to be aware of like, oh, be like, oh yes, queen and stuff like that, and all these different things. Some people might not like that. Um, but and at the same, you shouldn't how to say make the person feel bad for sort of being a little bit more sort of flamboyant and stuff and different things because that's just who they are. And there's a lot of discussions within the community and stuff like, oh, you're getting us a bad name for like being all this super flamboyant and stuff. I'm speaking in a very like male sort of way, but just people again, it's a spectrum. Everybody's going to fall somewhere, and people express who they are in different ways, and it's very important for us to take that into consideration. Let me just go into the chat because I'm hearing like quite a few nice beeps. Is this it? No, no, I'm in the wrong place. Yeah, here it is. Is there a polite or correct way to ask someone's pronouns? Yeah, what is he said? It's perfect. Yeah. For real, just go like, that's what are my pronouns? Yeah, yeah. Starting with your own, and then going. But yeah, it's usually a straightforward. People don't necessarily. Yeah, it's not a bad thing to ask. People, it's usually good to ask. Always ask, I'd say. But yeah, you see, you just said it perfectly. I don't think I need to build it. Oh, where is it? Where am I? Yeah, oh, I'm here. Back, come back. Again, I said don't assume again or use inclusive language. Like I said, don't go to that person who might look a little bit androgynous or a little bit out of the societal norms and just go and ask that person for their pronouns and stuff like that. Don't do that because it can be isolating. And also use inclusive language when you're addressing people, saying that person instead of hey, her, because you don't know how the person identifies as. When you're addressing a big crowd, using like esteemed guests, friends, stuff like that. It's very important. If you run a society and stuff, using like very inclusive language instead of like using gendered things a lot. Be very mindful of that. Don't offer unsolicited advice. I think this is very important because again, it goes back with like us wanting to help straight away. And sometimes the person just coming to tell you like, oh, this happened to me in my life, and they're just telling you that they don't necessarily need any help or they don't need anything else, just airing something that they're feeling. So it's very important for you to not jump into and be like, oh, you have to do this and this is all the different things. A good way of that I say is usually like, thank you for, if a person comes to you, it's like, thank you for sharing this with me. Is there anything that I could do to help you with? Is it are you looking for a couple of resources like that sort of conversation? Because then it kind of gives the person the power to ask you if to say like yes if they want your advice or not. So yeah, that's a very important thing to do. Don't call or ask people by or for their dead names unless needed or asked to. There are going to in all general terms, don't call people by their dead names. That's a for sure thing. But there are instances where somebody might request or ask for you to use their dead name. Say if they're not out in front of family, if it's a lecture or something, or all these different things, they might ask you to do so. So unless they've asked you or it's a needed situation, please do not call people by their dead names. Again, I think last one is like, do not make inappropriate comments or remarks. Things like, oh, that's so gay, or like, ooh, what's in between your pants in there? All these different things that you wouldn't expect to hear in the normal university conversation, but people use it all the time. As well as like in groups and in big groups of people, making sort of like derogatory terms and like or yeah, saying things like again like that's okay, and it's like oh, or like just minimizing LGBT experiences in general, because it's one of those things that like if you shoot a bullet in the air, it's gonna hit someone. It might be someone within your group that might be LGBT or all these different things, and they're not out to you or out to anybody in the group, but it just sends them a message that, oh, okay, maybe me being this is not a very accepting thing because everybody here is making fun of what being LGBT is. So yeah, be very mindful of all these different things, the comments that you're making. So I'm gonna go into the chat. Sorry, but it was a dead name. So a dead name is the name that that say a trans non-binary, well, not a trans or non-binary person was used to go by. It's not used to go by, but how can I put it? Used to go by, or was it's the name that their parents gave them or something when they were born. So when a person usually when a person transitions, they change their name to their actual name and how they want to be called and stuff like that. So when we speak about that name, it's the name that they used to have in simpler terms. So yeah, that's what that name is. It's a name that we shouldn't be using because it kind of if a person has decided to use a new name, it's just them feeling more confident within their identity, and using their dead name is sort of like invalidating the experience of them as who they are as a person. So always again avoid using the dead name and asking. It's like well, it's like the usual question that happens is like, so what's your real name? That's the sort of question where people go ahead and ask for their dead name and stuff. So asking for these things as well, it's not a very good thing to do usually because it's dehumanizing and all these different things. So yeah, that's what I would say. Hopefully it helps. Um, yeah, for example, when people call, yeah, exactly. Thank you for that example. When people call Caitlyn, yeah, Bruce. That's the thing. We should be referring her as Caitlyn. But because people tend to think it's funny, yeah, they usually go for her that name, which shouldn't. Yeah, it's a very unacceptable thing to do. Thank you for that example. That was very, very, very helpful. Thank you for that. Very much appreciated. Okay, okay. Again, we just spoke about the inappropriate comments and remarks. Very important for us not to do those because we don't know who we might be affecting. And then, yeah, okay, kind of finishing off things. Remember that being an ally goes beyond showing up to Pride. So it's all good to go and celebrate and all these different things, but for some people, that's where their sort of support starts and ends. Slap on a rainbow somewhere, and then, yep, I'm here to support and stuff like that. But we need to also remember that Pride was like a protest. People were fighting for their rights and stuff like that, which has we know Pride has become like commercialized now and like places just like slapping rainbows everywhere, stuff like that. So we have to be very considerate of that. But it also being an ally also includes supporting other intersecting identities such as queer and trans people of color who legit started the movement of the queer movement in general, the LGBT movement and stuff like that. We are where we are today because of queer and trans people of color. Hopefully you've been seeing Pose and stuff. If you've not seen, there's Paris is Burning as well, which isn't a Paris is Burning is not a very good representation of everything, but you can have a look, you can have a watch of that as well. There's a Marsha P. Johnson, The Life and Death of Marsha P. Johnson. I think that's the name of the film. It's on Netflix as well. You can have a look. So yeah, there's queer people with disabilities, and more. So again, when we're thinking about our activism and supporting people, you have to be again. I think was said in our comments, intersectionality is very important. There's people within the community who have many different identities as well, that when we're doing our allyship or all these sort of things, we tend to forget. This flag that's right here was a very contested issue, because people just thought that the normal rainbow flag just did the job, but a lot of people didn't feel represented with the flag as it was, because sort of the activism was more towards, again, like I said, gay white men who have who the media and who have a lot more of the representation. So we see a lot for trans people. There's not a lot of representation. Queer and trans people of color. There's not a lot of representation. Pretty much every single person who's from different intersecting identities doesn't have the exact same representation, and there's still hate even within the community. You still see racism. You still see Islamophobia. You still see ableism and all these different things. So it's very important for us to think about that when we're like doing activism and stuff. So yeah, here are a couple of contacts. There's mine, LGBT Society, Trans Officer, and stuff like that. Please take a picture of this, if you can, to refer to a friend, or for yourself to refer yourself to. Yeah, hopefully this helps. I'm gonna go into the next slide. Then some further resources. The Leicester LGBT Center. It's in Leicester. They do like support groups and stuff, more counseling and stuff. They do that. Trade, sexual health, it's like they do testing as well. Very good people. Gendered Intelligence, which is they're based in London, I think, and they're a trans rent charity that do a lot of trans workshops, trans resources. They're very good. We've worked with them at the Students Union before, and they're very good people. I would say one of the best organizations doing some good trans work out there. Mindout and Switchboard, which do like more mental health stuff. I think Switchboard probably has a Discord or a podcast or something. I don't know, if I might be mistaken. But yeah, they do like mental health support and all these different things. They're very good. And then Victim First, which is a third party reporting forum. The university works with them sometimes. They're very good, reporting any sort of hate crime, sexual harassment. So yeah, very good stuff. And that's it for me. Sorry for rambling for too much, too long. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. It's been